Yeah, so maybe we should just jump right in and talk a little bit about Lifta, this
Yeah.
amazing project. First volume, I mean, it took you like many years, right, to
Yeah.
realize.
Yeah.
So perhaps you could talk about that a little bit. Where did Lifta originate and what made you want to do this? I mean, it's a very, I mean, the publication is, I haven't seen the physical object, but I've browsed through like the PDF and yeah, it's beautiful. It feels like a lot of labor went into this and a lot of care. So maybe you can talk about, yeah, what prompted you to start this project.
So it basically started kind of as a very small idea when we were living in Dubai, also with Rashed, the third co-founder, and we were working at Brown Book magazine, and kind of just wanted to do something outside of that that was completely free of a lot of the limitations and like barriers that we felt existed in publishing and in this kind of work and projects. Just
Sorry,
both
can
one.
you say just a little bit about these limitations? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I guess like censoring and things like that. Also, just Palestine in general. Like a lot of the things about it aren't super complete or super honest or
Mhm.
even produced by Palestinians. Adding on to that, though, we wanted to also create a space for something that was not where the narratives could fit in that weren't being pushed. Like there's a piece I want to just read to you from. So there's one author who contributed named Wafa Al Khadra, and she's a professor in Jordan. And she basically kind of details some of the different oral histories that were passed on through her husband's side of the family. And one of the things, she goes into a few of these different stories, and they're really beautiful. One of the passages I wanted to read is one story recalls his mother using a strand of her own hair to cut a boiled egg into three parts for her children. When you focus on each story, you see the details of their everyday life. These were seen as not political enough to be included in the Palestinian narrative. So I think that's kind of what we mean by what is being censored is stories that aren't political enough or something like that. They just kind of get grazed over in the history.
It's almost like a reverse understanding of censorship.
Yeah.
Usually, what is political gets censored, and what tries to sort of approach politics differently is not being
Definitely.
is not as viable.
Yeah. Even just daily life.
Right.
And like when we were talking earlier, like I described it as like in some ways this is also like one of like the many things that is an archive of feelings, like as simple as that is, just how people view their Palestinianness, what the future is based on the present, what needs to be solved in the present to achieve like our desired futures.
I think we just like jumped right into sort of the meat of the conversation. Perhaps just like to go back to my initial question, can you just like give like a more general framework of what Lifta is? And then we can just like continue the conversation.
Yeah. So basically, Lifta was created with around like 35 contributors. So I was one of the editors on it, and Leila designed it, and Rashed was one of the editors as well. So it's really like a collection of exercises around what is future Palestine, and it's a playbook of like imagination. How much can we reimagine based on like our histories and our current realities. We really wanted to include people from all over, so there's like the diaspora, Palestinians in Palestine who live in Haifa, who live in Ramallah, who live in Chile, and so on. So it's kind of a space that was created to connect people along with disrupting that like what exists at the forefront for about Palestinian narratives and so on. So yeah, I guess it's mostly like a connecting space and also a space to disrupt.
Right.
So it's been cool to kind of see this community sprout up of just the more random people that don't get like
as much playtime or you don't hear about as much, and to kind of then be able to connect them to other people in this community that's sprouted.
So it's really mixing people who are top tier artists of like the society to people who've never been published before and giving space and equal value.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
I was just thinking about, I mean, the two of you, and maybe it'd be interesting to hear a little bit about your own background, where you come from, etc. Because it feels to me that this publication is very much rooted in a diasporic space.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I am from Kentucky and from Jordan. I'm from Palestine, but my family is Palestinian and American. And Jordan was kind of my grasp of like what I was for so long until I began visiting and spending time there, and then eventually lived there.
My dad's family is Mexican, and then my mom's family is Palestinian Syrian. And I grew up partially here in Mexico when I was younger, and then in Texas as well. And my experience was definitely more separated and isolated from the land. It was definitely very strongly tied to like my grandparents and the stories that they tell me and the food that I would eat, and kind of just this very small bubble of like family. The connection to land definitely wasn't like a huge part of my experience as Palestinian growing up.
Yeah, same. Like the connection to the land was, I didn't go to Palestine for the first time until I was 20, I think.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a working up to it moment as well. And it's also a massive privilege to be able to go back to the land and to even have like that experience.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. And most of the contributors don't necessarily have a connection to Palestine per se, but do have some kind of connection to the region. Lifta has almost like a kind of internationalist scope that reminds me a little bit of like leftist magazines from like the 60s and 70s, that would like connect writers and authors and artists across the global south to kind of create a conversation around emancipation and liberation, and ways that the so-called like third world or global south could sort of organize itself along these sort of literary or political nexus. So yeah, maybe you want to talk a little bit about that. I mean, does that resonate with Lifta?
All of the contributors to Lifta are of Palestinian descent, but obviously like have lived such different lives. Like if you're a third generation Chilean, your life is much different than like my dad came to the States and I grew up there, and our lives are going to be much different. How connected we are is much different.
But there's still that connection, I guess.
Yeah.
That exists, that's incredibly strong despite.
Because of the historical injustice.
Yeah.
That connection is as strong as ever because it has something that it wants to claim.
Definitely. And I think because like all of our personal experiences, like we all hear these stories from such a young age, we all know, and we're all kind of radicalized in a way from a very young age. So like these like internationalists, I guess, perspectives and stuff are kind of just inherent in wanting to like create a community for all that like have this type of experience.
Or even people who are like Maori from New Zealand as well, who've read like passages and been like, I actually didn't think about Palestine when I was reading that. I like located it to my experience. So I feel like it has that same effect, but at the same time it's being written by Palestinians, but it's a more global international, just because Palestine is not just the geographical location anymore.
Right. I wonder if you could give like perhaps just talk about one or two contributions of Lifta, if you want to sort of introduce the viewers a little bit.
There's one that's set in Haifa called Haifa Ladies Night, and it's between one organizer of like the Haifa Independent Film Festival, another cultural organizer who's like between Berlin and Haifa, and also like an artist as well. And they kind of just went into like their experience as Palestinians who already live among Zionists because they lived their whole lives in Haifa. Like what is your idea of a future? Like they kind of already live in a future if all of Palestine is colonized. Like they have the insight. So like something really funny from their conversation, I'm just gonna read it out loud. This is by someone named Lina Mansour, who I'm quoting. She said, you know, Palestinians who don't live here, who have never lived here, who romanticize it so much. I find it so hard to tell them the truth that there are parts of it here that make me sick, the same parts that they have so much nostalgia for. She said, Akka, all the drunk men puking on the beach, looking like absolute shit. You walk in Haifa and you go into Hadar, and it's a Russian mob. Jerusalem, I swear I hate it.
It's a very like specific experience that like they have that, yeah, I guess really tells you this like nostalgic vision that we have, or that maybe other Palestinians that don't live in this situation have, can forget that like this also exists there.
Right. I skimmed through the publication and I sort of read some sections of that interview, and I remember that she was also saying something like I have hope for the future or something. She was talking about hope. I don't remember exactly what she was saying about hope, but could you remind me?
She says everyone needs to find something that gives them hope. And then they kind of go into a little tangent about Gaza, and someone says, at least let them lift the sanctions and Gaza can live in the same shit show that is the West Bank. Free Palestine, free motherfucking Palestine.
Yeah. I remember that last line. In terms of the circulation of the publication, how can people purchase it, or how can we access the object, or how is it distributed?
We actually just received word that the majority of the books have arrived to Berlin, where our distribution center is. So they will be available online on our website, worldwide shipping, hopefully at the end of this week. But we also are stocked currently at Print and Matter and Inga Books in Chicago, as well as ICA in Canada. So they're available there now, but it's limited availability.
I've noticed you have some English texts, Arabic texts, but you do not. Did you translate everything, or did you choose to keep the texts in their original languages?
Everything has been translated into English in the back. So there's Spanish, 2 pieces in Spanish, a few pieces in Arabic, and majority in English. But the back has a translation section. And something that we want to develop for the website eventually is to have the text translated into Arabic, but due with being like a small publication and kind of running on like a lot of favors and paying people, like once money started coming in and everything, we haven't had the funds yet to do that. But that's definitely on the to-do list when sales start coming in.
And as far as the book is concerned, everything in like the main part is the originally submitted language, because we wanted to give people the chance to explore and express what they wanted to in the most comfortable way for them. So everything in the front of the book is the original language.
Right. In the magazine that I co-edit with Ghalia Sadawi and Iman Mersal, we publish texts both in Arabic and in English, and sometimes do not translate them, because we want to debunk sort of the access that translation could give you to a text. But also sometimes simply because we don't have the funds to translate. And sometimes we just pick a text that we think, okay, this text should really be translated in that language or in this language. So it's like a more kind of strategic decision around translation.
It was definitely a conversation we had, because there was also the debate of, is English being prioritized? Why is English being prioritized? Why is everything being translated only into English? we thought at this point it would make sense for access, but that's also why we want to make sure that we have the translation into Arabic eventually for the website.
And also being American citizens,
Yeah.
our audience and like a lot of our target in terms of like who we're trying to reach, they speak English and they're Americans, and they need to know this stuff more than a lot of people because of the involvement that like our government has in Palestine. So in that sense, I think it serves the purpose to be English, for that reach.
Yeah. And perhaps just one last question is I know that you're currently working on another publication. So do you want to say a few words about what's next and what you're currently working on?
Yeah. So Lifta is a multi-platform space. The first project is the book, and what we're getting into in Mexico is an archival project, working with like Arab diasporas in Mexico and south of Mexico, essentially.
And it's been interesting in kind of the start of the research. There's a massive population of Arabs, especially Lebanese and Syrians in Mexico specifically. And just kind of going off of those super high numbers, it's one of the largest diasporas outside of the Middle East.
Well, I think you're doing a great job, like mobilizing the diaspora. I mean, I just saw on your I was on your website and I saw this video that you made for called Talk About Lebanon, that talks about, you know, the current sort of economic collapse and the explosion. So you sort of you know, made this collage of differently sourced images, and I think that was really effective. And I think also it's a great way to kind of not only reach out to the diaspora, but also mobilize it towards, you know, a political goal. So I think that's really great.
I think this is kind of trailing off, but going back to the idea of like what you were asking us about, like Palestine, how we feel connected to it, like in terms of geographical land. Something that's interesting is like my idea of Palestine and like what is home is so much of a feeling that is just familiarity. So like I kind of consider, even like in some ways, Beirut, I find home in Beirut like a lot, and it's definitely been my safe space like at so many points. Like I still consider it one of my safe spaces, and something that I feel I'm in Beirut and I think about Haifa or something.
There's such a closeness, the way it looks, feels, and also just knowing that you are as close as you are just feels even stronger.
For sure. Okay. I have to go. My son just.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, both. I really appreciated the conversation, and the project is amazing. So really, good luck with
we want
everything.
to send you a physical copy. So can you send me your address?
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll definitely send you my address.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, we'll be in touch, and good luck, and look forward to seeing your next project.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for everything.
Yeah.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.